the keys are to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. This is going to be an interesting one. We're going to talk about the 49ers potentially using a Bill Walsh draft philosophy in 2025. And it's been a long time since Bill Walsh was, pulling the strings and getting the draft picks. And he had some of the best drafts in the history of the San Francisco 49ers organization. A lot of people believe the 1986 draft could have been the very best. It produced so many great players, including a left tackle of the future with Steve Wallace, a Hall of Famer with Charles Haley. They got John Taylor. By the way, happy birthday to John Taylor. It's his birthday today. They got Tom Rathman. They got Tim McKyer. They got Don Griffin. It was just a who's who of players. And I didn't even mention a couple like Kevin Fagan. So there's a lot of talent that came out in that 1986 draft. But another draft that definitely symbolized his unique approach and how he was willing to do anything it took to change over his team has to be the 1981 NFL draft. Bill Walsh decided that he was tired of a secondary that wasn't going to be good. He was tired of going through over 30 different secondary players and not being able to get the type of play he was looking for. He brought Dwight Hicks back in 1980 after Hicks had been working in a convenience store. And I'm sure everyone knows the story now. He was stocking shelves. That's what he was doing. And he got brought in to compete. But Bill Walsh knew that he had a void when it came to the secondary. And I think that there are some interesting similarities to how the 49ers' current 2025 roster looks. Not so much with the secondary this time, but this time with the defensive line. I think when you look at who they've got right now, they just don't have the depth. They potentially don't have starters. Right now, if you went into the season, Yetur Gross-Matos would be starting opposite Nick Bosa. I don't think that's the worst thing, but I don't think that's exactly what the 49ers were hoping they were going to have. And then when you look at defensive tackle, you've got a real blunder here because you don't have any starters. Jordan Elliott and Kevin Givens, those are rotational pieces, and I get it. Jordan Elliott has started football games in the NFL. But I don't believe that he makes your team the best by being a starter. I think if he is a rotational piece who adds pass rush upside, I think you're pretty happy with it. But when you look at the overall 49ers interior defensive line, they just don't have those guys that can get it done. And I think that they've been searching for a while now. They had DeForest Buckner, they had Eric Armstead, they had DJ Jones, and that rotation was phenomenal. But since all those players have moved on, the 49ers really don't have that interior defensive presence that they really need. Well, guess what? In 1981, the draft lined up really well for the San Francisco 49ers to be able to get some really good secondary players in rounds 2, in round 4, round 5. There was a lot of really talented players that they could hit on that could help the secondary. And I think you look at this draft currently, the way it's constructed, there's a lot of really talented players that are available for the 49ers in round 1, round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5, that could potentially help this football team. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to address the 49ers' needs by drafting the same way that Bill Walsh did in 1981. Yes, the position will be a little bit different, but the overall thought process, we're going to take defense first. We're going to put our focus on defensive line over other needs. And we're going to try to go round by round and just see what a draft, the way that Bill Walsh did, would look like. And I think it's a viable option. So I think this is a unique exercise. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited for it. And we're going to go through all the nuances of it and talk about it. And it may not be something the 49ers ultimately do, but it definitely could play out this way. Who knows? So please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you are going to bet with Bet Online. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. The Final Four is upon us, and BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are played. With a large selection of odds on everything from college basketball to Major League Baseball to NHL and UFC, and even the Kentucky Derby and NFL season futures are ready for you to bet. In between games, head over to the Bet Online Casino with all the top Vegas style games, including poker and live casino. Bet Online, the game starts here. So, first off, let's go the rundown of 1981 and what the 49ers did. So, they were picking pick 8 in the first round. This year, the 49ers are picking 11, so 3 spots difference in where they're picking with their first pick. The 49ers selected Ronnie Lott out of USC, and of course, he was a Hall of Famer, and boy, was that a dynamic pick. But secondary with their first pick. In round 2, they had 2 second-round picks, and in round 2, the first time, pick 36, they took John Hardy, nose tackle, out of Iowa. So, big nose tackle with the second. So, deviated from secondary with their second pick. Then their second pick of the second round, which was their third pick of the draft, was Eric Wright, cornerback from Missouri, which we know ends up being a huge selection for the 49ers. He's with them for 10 years. Ronnie Lott played in the league for 14 years. Eric Wright played in the league for 10 years. And you get 2 solid guys, but 2 out of the first 3 picks are secondary. Then in the third round, they get Carlton Williamson out of Pittsburgh, and Williamson steps in and plays 7 seasons for the San Francisco 49ers, and he's a key contributor. So 3 of the first 4 picks are secondary, but not to be outdone, they have a 5th round pick, and that goes Lynn Thomas, who ends up being the 49ers nickel corner in this draft, him as well out of Pitt. So literally right there, 4 of the first 5 picks in this draft were one position in secondary. Then they went running back with Arrington Jones. So that's the first time they went offense. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 picks. So the 6th pick can be offense. That's what we'll stick to in this draft. And you might say, hey, the 49ers got a lot of needs in offensive line. But for this exercise, we're not going to touch it until we get to the 49ers 6th pick. Then they took Pete Kugler, nose tackle out of Penn State. And he was in the NFL for 8 years. So then after that, it was all offense. So they took one offensive guy in the first set of picks, which is interesting. And then after that, back then they had a lot more rounds. Round 8, it was a running back. Round 11, a tight end. Round 12, a running back. And round 12 for the last pick, a quarterback. So when we get to that part, we could start taking offensive players in the later rounds. But we're going to try to stick to this. And so everywhere that it says defensive back, we're going to take a defensive lineman, whether that's edge rusher or interior defensive lineman. And then when it comes to a spot like in the second round, when it goes to nose tackle, we could take a cornerback or we could take another need that's not offense. So that's kind of what we're looking to do in this exercise. It's not a mock draft per se, but kind of an idea of what could happen if the 49ers went this direction. So we are going to use a mock draft simulator to kind of help us along the path as we look to select the proper players that the 49ers could get with this. And I had this idea last week, and I was hoping to be able to record it and put it out Friday, and I wasn't able to do it. The funny thing is here I am on Monday recording this, and there's been people in the comment section saying, hey, I think the 49ers might go with a 1981 type situation where you get some starters. And the 49ers did get starters in that draft. Ronnie Lott, Eric Wright, Carlton Williamson were all starters, 3 of the first 4 picks. And then Lynn Thomas was a nickel corner that helped that football team out a lot. So 4 contributors in the first 5 picks is huge. Could the 49ers do that by focusing on defensive line? That's what we're going to try to do in this draft. I'm going to go ahead and put the mock up, and we'll go through and we'll have a fun conversation about what the 49ers could do. And of course, we got to go D-line in round 1. It doesn't mean it has to be D-tackle. It could be edge as well. So we'll see what it looks like in this mock draft. So Cam Ward went pick number 1. We'll see what happens after that. Will Campbell Wow, offensive line going off the board here early. Interesting. Um, and so the 49ers are going to get a best case scenario here. We're not going to trade back or make any trades. But interestingly enough, Ronnie Lott slipped to 8. He was considered the number one defensive back in that draft. And here, the number one guy is Mason Graham. And so I'm not going to overthink this thing. I was interested in going edge because I thought Mason Graham was going to be off the board. But there is a scenario where Mason Graham slides. Now, I think he probably ends up going to Jacksonville at pick 5. But for this, Ronnie Lott slipped to 8. Maybe Mason Graham slips to 11. And the 49ers potentially get their defensive tackle of the future. So Mason Graham is going to be the first pick in this exercise to do what Bill Walsh did. So Graham is the pick. Now we'll see who's going to be available in the second round. And in the second round, the 49ers with Bill Walsh's first pick. Now, the key is in this one, the 49ers have 2 third-round picks, where in Bill Walsh's 1981 draft, they had 2 second-round picks. So we'll have to remember that. It does not mean the 49ers have to go defensive tackle. We can go a different position, which I will probably end up doing. Now, if Walter Nolan is on the board, that might be too hard. But I think we're going to try to keep it the same way. Wow, Walter Nolan's going to be there. We're not going to trade. So the question is, do we deviate from Bill Walsh's thought process? No, because Walter Nolan is there. And so, yes, you would probably take Walter Nolan. But I want to stick to exactly what they did with the focus on the draft. And so with the second pick, they went nose tackle. And they probably did it because they had a second rounder. So we could easily go Walter Nolan right here and then say one of the third round picks has to be a nose tackle, or has to be a defensive back or something like that, which I think would be more realistic with the 2/3. We'll say pick 75 has to be a different position and kind of stick to that. So we're going to take Walter Nolan. This is be a crazy process to think that you could have Mason Graham and Walter Nolan along your defensive front, but it would be something the 49ers would be interested in doing. And there's a lot of good players here. You could easily go corner with Trey Amos, but we're going to wait till 75 to go with a different position that's not defensive line because of the 2 third-rounders kind of being in place of the 2 second-rounders, the thought process going that direction. So we're kind of talking it out as we're going. As we near 75, we'll see who's going to be available. And there's going to be some very talented players that are still going to be on the board and some guys that I'm sure the 49ers would love to get their hands on. There goes Trey Amos. That would have been a dynamite pick. Darian Porter still available. Andrew Makuba still available there. We'll see if any of those guys are available when the 49ers pick. Makuba goes off the board, and once again, we're ignoring trades. So this is what we decided, that we have 2 third-round picks, so we're going to let that mimic what happened in the 1981 draft, and they had 2 second-round picks. So they felt a willingness with the first one to go a different direction. So we're going to do that here. We're not allowed to go offense as part of this exercise, so no Jared Wilson. So no offensive players per se available. So the direction we can go is we could go with a cornerback, which seems like it makes a lot of sense. You got Denzel Burke. You've got Darian Porter. Both of those guys make sense for the 49ers. You got linebacker Chris Paul Jr. Now, we do have to go away from defensive line on this one. So no Ashton Gelati, no Omar Norman Lott, no Shamar Turner. Even those would be dynamite picks. We have to go away. So I'm gonna go with Darian Porter. I think that Darian Porter is a really good player. So this is a guy that has translated from playing wide receiver to playing cornerback. He's got ball skills. He's still learning the position, but he's got extreme height. He's 6'3". He's over 200 pounds. He probably could get a little bit more physical when it comes to contact and tackling, but he plays physical. He's got natural athleticism, length with his arms to be able to get in front of footballs and get past deflections. He's also a guy that has the hands to be able to get interceptions. I think he's going to be a playmaker that fits well in a 49er scheme, and I think he could get even better in time. So I'm a huge fan of Darian Porter. I think this is the pick to go. And then we could get back to our defensive line selection. So Darian Porter's the pick, and we can kind of look at what the 49ers have done so far Mason Graham, Walter Nolan, Darian Porter. Crazy thought process that either one of these guys would be available, but we're just letting everything play out. And I think that, you just got to do that. And Ronnie Lott falling to 8 was a little bit of surprise. And so I think that you go ahead and you hit on these guys. And so now we're getting to pick 100, and we got to go back to the defensive line as part of it. Our next 2 picks need to be defensive line. Now we can go defensive end or defensive tackle. So let's look. Deion Walker from Kentucky. That is a big individual. Right now we have basically Mason Graham and Walter Nolan who have the flexibility to play both positions, but not a pure run stopper per se. You got Joshua Farmer here, who I think is the best defensive tackle on the board currently. Here's CJ West, and you need a guy that can stop the run. CJ West could be the pick here. I think that's a great option for the 49ers, just looking at the players available. Jordan Phillips later on, and we do have to take 2 defensive tackles or a defensive tackle and an edge rusher. So let's look at who's available when it comes to edge real quick and just see. So here's Tyler Barron. Here's Antoine Powell Ryland, who I am a huge fan of. I would love to get my hands on him as well. And they do need to go defensive line with the next pick. So defensive tackle, Farmer, West. I think we're going to go West here. We've got 2 stud, 3-tech style guys, attacking penetrators. Let's go get a big run stopper who has some pass rush upside. I think a little bit more pass rush upside than Jordan Phillips. I do like Jamari Caldwell. I think this would be a little early for me. So I'm going to go ahead and go CJ West at pick 100. And you can see how the board is working out. Graham, Nolan, Porter, West, very similar to how Bill Walsh was doing it in 1981 with the focus on defensive line. And now we've got to see with pick 113 if we can lock up the edge, and we're going to do it. Antoine Powell Ryland. So if you don't know much about Powell Ryland, he is a force. So he's a little bit undersized when it comes to length, especially with his arms, but a guy that generated a lot of pressure off the edge for Virginia Tech. 16 sacks last year in the ACC. Just got a really good first step. Got the ability to win with power. Has enough speed to win around the edge. He's got pretty good bend, and I think he's really good against the run. So this is a guy with good hands, good contact balance. He's able to fight through contact. He's able to kind of get his timing just right when it comes to dealing with offensive tackles. He catches them mid-step in their slide and gets them off balance. I think he's very productive. And I think if he had better measurables, if he had longer arms, if he was a little bit taller, that we'd be talking about Antoine Powell Ryland being a day 2 pick and probably closer to a day 1 pick. I mean, that's how productive he was at Virginia Tech. He's a guy I've been watching for a while because of how good his hands are and the technique that he plays with. And so I think that he's going to be the target here. And there are some other talented guys here who I want to give, some credit to. And this is just insane to me, by the way, that Jack Sawyer and Jared Ivey are falling down some of these mock draft boards to this point. I don't think Jack Sawyer makes it out of round 3. I think people look at him, and yes, there's not the elite bend or athleticism to be able to get home around the corner. But you talk about a motor and a never stop mentality. He's too good. And Jared Ivey is just too big. There's going to be a 3-4 defense that locks him up to play, a 4-eye or 5 technique in their scheme. I just think he's too big and long for that. I like him a lot. Kyman Rucker's got a lot of ability too. I mean, these are actually some really good edge rushers down here. Later on in the draft, you see Q Robinson. That's a speed guy around the edge. So that's interesting. But I know a lot of people love David Walker, another undersized guy. And I like David Walker as well. I just have seen Antoine Powell Ryland, and I just like him a little bit more. So Antoine Powell Ryland is the pick for the San Francisco 49ers. And now we go on to the next pick. So we can go offense for the first time. And Bill Walsh went running back with this next pick. He took Arrington Jones. So we can go running back. It doesn't mean we have to go running back. We can go with an offensive player. It's the first time we can go offense in this draft. Now, Bill Walsh went with a skilled player. So looking at the board right now, Normally when I look at the board, I would want to go Demetrius Knight. He would be somebody that would be on top of the board for me. You got a guy like Jeffrey Bossa. He would be available as well. Like those guys would make a lot of sense for the 49ers when we're looking at, talented skilled players. Kyle Monogany, possibility running back, great balance from Rutgers, really good pass protector. RJ Harvey, good running back out of the backfield, catching the football. A lot of potential there. I think you look at what the 49ers might need. Here's another guy in Dylan Sampson who's got a lot of speed. I think there's some running backs later, the same way that Bill Walsh went with running backs later in the draft, like with Jerry White in the 8th round. So we could look the 7th round, potentially get one. We've got to go defense again with the next pick. So at 138, we're just picking a guy that's a talented offensive player. I think personally, and I know it went running back, we're just mainly focusing on offense. I think Chase Lunt would be a fantastic pick for the 49ers right here. Going to the offensive side of the ball and getting a guy that can make some plays out there blocking. And I know they like the guys they have, but they could potentially need a swing tackle. So we're going to go Chase Lunt with 138 here. And then we're going to turn our attention back to the defensive side of the ball. And we can go anywhere on defense now with the next pick. We might need to go with a linebacker, even though the top linebackers just went off. So let's look defense and see who's available. We've went defensive tackle and defensive line a lot. We no longer have to do that. Now we can look at some other positions. So Tommy Hill, they met with him from Nebraska. You've got Jack Kaiser, linebacker, Notre Dame. Teddy Buchanan from Cal. I think he's a pretty solid linebacker. I think that would be a pretty good selection if we decided to go that route. So there's some talented guys. Here's Noel Williams. I think we're getting a little bit further. Upton Stout. I like those guys. I like Stout a lot, potentially as a safety. Noel Williams, of course, as a corner. And we have some talented players that are available, even though we are going to be going offense next. So it's probably a time to pick a linebacker. And I think that we're going to go with Teddy Buchanan. I think Buchanan fits really nice. He's got the necessary size, weight, athleticism, playing at Cal. And I mean, the guy's put together. He's twitchy, got a lot of ability. I don't put him up there right now for my breakdowns of him with Jeffrey Bossa or Demetrius Knight or some of those guys that are up there at the linebacker position. We'll just go ahead and look at linebackers overall. But I think he's extremely talented. It has the ability to be a great special teams player early. Now, a couple other guys that I want to bring up just to mention. Jackson Woodard, I like him out of UNLV. I think he's a very good tackler. You've got Carson Bruner, who's a very athletic linebacker out of Washington. And, of course, if you've been on the channel for a while, Chandler Martin, one of the guys that I really, really like in this draft that could be a late-round pick or an undrafted free agent. So Teddy Buchanan is going to be the pick. Bill Walsh went nose tackle because his focus was on defensive back. For us, our focus is on D tackle. So we went linebacker on this one. And so now it's all about going offense. We did not go offense early. And so now it's our goal to kind of stack the offense with some talented players. So we went offensive line earlier. And so we're really going to work on going skill position. So we want to get running backs. We want to get tight ends. We want to get athletic players. Here's Jalen Lane, interesting player from Virginia Tech. I'm going to run through a few of these guys as we look. But Jalen Lane is super fast. He's a 4.3 guy. Created some of the most separation in college football this season. I think he's an option here for the 49ers to stretch the field. Because we went tackle, I'm going to steer clear of Jack Nelson, but I am a fan of Jack Nelson. Ricky White, he doesn't create separation very well on his own, but I think he does a pretty good job of doing some things and getting open. So I think he's a lot of fun. To go with a super fast running back with Jaden Blue, who just ran a 4.2 40 at his pro day. Super speed there at running back. That's a possibility. Taj Brooks, another pretty good running back. I think we want to go with an athletic player here. Running back would make a lot of sense. They need someone there. Luke Lachey could be one of the best tight ends on the board, and we're not going to have another pick here for a little while. If we want to get a tight end, we might have to go that direction. But I mean, we got some very talented running backs as well. Interesting. Let's see. I think Jalen Lane, the wide receiver. I mean, that's speed right there. Um, the two fastest guys on the board are Jaden Blue, who is an absolute speed demon. This might be a little early for him. The speed factor, and then Jalen Lane, wide receiver from Virginia Tech, and he's 5'9", 189, 199, 91 pounds. So he is smaller, but he's a really fast player. But I don't think I'm going to go receiver here. I like some other receivers later that I think would be a lot of fun for the 4 years. I'm going to go with the super fast running back, Jaden Blue. Let's add some speed, add talent. Bill Walsh went running back, and I think that will kind of stick to that. He went with tight end with his next pick. So if it's available, who knows? Maybe we'll find a tight end with that as well. There's going to be some good ones potentially on the board as we're looking at it right now. You got Luke Lachey, who I like, Jalen Conyers, who met with the 49ers. I think those guys are both possibilities if they make it to 227. There's a chance that both of them could be gone, but there's a lot of talented players, still down here. Benjamin Urasek, I think that he's another guy that's interesting for the 49ers potentially, but as of right now, we're about to get to pick 200, and both those tight ends are available. And so it could be an opportunity for us to fall in line with Bill Walsh and go tight end. Conyers just went. Luke Lachey on the board. We could go Jackson Haas as well. He's a talented player. There's some other guys too. We want athletic tight ends. I think Lachey's more of a dual threat as he goes off the board. So now it gets a little bit more interesting of who we go with. We might have to look at the board overall because that could be, there might be a wide receiver or another athletic player. Jackson Haas is a good tight end. So I think he would be possible for us to go. We went running back, so no need to go to ETN here. Jalen Travis would be a solid tackle late in the draft, but we want to go something more athletic, a wide receiver, skilled player, a tight end. And so there's some guys. Here's LaJohntay Wester, another smaller guy who can operate in space. Here's Brew McCoy, and I'm a huge fan of Brew McCoy, wide receiver, Tennessee. I think he could be a big-time find for the 49ers as we're an offense of mode. Keandre Lambert-Smith. I like Keandre Lambert-Smith a lot out of Auburn. And I think that you look at him and the way that he's able to play, he does a good job of getting open and finding areas to sit down in the zone and be able to present himself. He can make plays in the open field. He can get yards after the catch, which fits the 49ers scheme. I think he's a lot of fun too as a guy that we talk about here as an opportunity, to get a player like that. Here's Benjamin Urasek, the tight end from Georgia. We could go with him later. So it comes down to, do we go Keandre Lambert-Smith or do we go Brew McCoy? I think Brew McCoy is very Jawan Jennings-esque, but can play X. And he's dealt with injuries in his career, but right now you're not really worried about it. We're going to go Brew McCoy from Tennessee, and we're going to add him. Big old 6'4", over 200-pound player that can create with the ball in his hands and yards after the catch. He's a willing blocker. He's a guy that gets after it, and we're going to see what happens at 249. We are going to go offense at 249, and we're going to continue to build, adding more skilled players. We added a lot of defensive guys earlier. And now we're going to add another offensive player here. And it doesn't mean we don't double up at positions. That's okay. If there's a tight end that we really like, we could potentially go tight end. And I think there will be, a guy here or there that we could look at. We got Urasek here. So Benjamin Urasek is a guy that played at Stanford and then went to Georgia. He's got ability to make plays. I think he's a possibility. I want to go over a couple more tight ends that are going to be out there, just so, people kind of get an idea of who's available. And some guys the 49ers met with, like Rivaldo Fairweather out of Auburn. They met with him as well. So I think that there's a couple of guys here that are interesting when it comes to tight end. I'm pretty much locked in on Urasek. I think the 49ers need to add another tight end, and Urasek is going to be the guy developmental here at 249. And before we make our last pick, here's what we've done so far. Mason Graham, at pick 11, Walter Nolan at 43. Could be a pipe dream. Darian Porter. And so just like in 1981, they had 2 picks in the second round. Well, in this one, we have 2 picks in the third round. So that's where we did it. The alternate non-defensive lineman, we went Darian Porter, cornerback. Then we went back to our defensive line with C.J. West, Antoine Powell-Ryland. Then we went offense because that was where Bill Walsh went offense the first time you're available. And we went with Chase Lunt, the athletic right tackle, who's going to be one of the best at cutting plays off on the backside of the zone. He's one of the best to do it. He fits really nice. Teddy Buchanan, the linebacker. Then we got Jaden Blue, the running back, speed, 4.2. Brew McCoy, yards after the catch. Benjamin Urasek, smart, a guy that can do some things at tight end. And now it's time to get the final player. Now, Bill Walsh took a quarterback with that last pick. So we can look at quarterback. There's Mac Brosmer. I think that would be a possibility. You got Taylor Ergersma, he's a possibility. I think those guys would make sense. I'm going to look at the board and see who the best offensive players are that are available because I'm not against taking another wide receiver, another running back to come in and compete. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, I think, is an interesting guy, big physical, athletic player. I think he's a possibility. Here's Keandre Lambert-Smith. I wanted him earlier, so maybe we double up on wide receiver. That would make some sense. Efton Chisholm out of Eastern Washington, one of the guys that separates, but he's a little bit smaller. I don't know. I think that there's some guys that are interesting here who have a lot of speed and athleticism that could be targets for the 49ers when it comes to the offensive side of the football. And you're looking for guys that can make some things happen. And so going a extra wide receiver, extra running back is not a bad idea. But I think we're going to go with Andrew Armstrong. So I haven't really talked a lot about Andrew Armstrong. 6'3", 202 pounds out of Arkansas. And I want to take someone I haven't really taken yet. So he played absolutely fantastic. And everyone talks about Tesla, his counterpart, who had a really good season. But he had 78 catches for 1,140 yards last year. And he's one of those guys that wins with contested catches. He does a good job, as you can see right here on the mark. He ran a 4.51 at the combine, and I'm trying to figure out why he's sitting here ranked 266 with his ability to get open, win in zone, intermediate routes, or something he does really well. I just think that we're going to take him, and I do like Keandre Lambert-Smith, but Andrew Armstrong is a name that I'm watching right now. I think he's got a lot of potential. It could go higher in this draft than where he's currently at, and the 49ers could use some wide receiver help and a big body, physical guy who blocks, plays really tough, wins with contested catches, is exactly the kind of player the 49ers could want. And so Andrew Armstrong's going to be the pick, and that's going to, finish off this exercise of doing the things the way that Bill Walsh did in 1981. And so here's what it ends up looking like. Mason Graham, that is the first pick at pick 11. So Ronnie Lott was the pick for the 49ers at pick 8. We took Mason Graham at 11. Both those guys slid, so that's interesting. Next up is, instead of having the 2 second-round picks, the Niners had 2 thirds. So we went defensive tackle again with Walter Nolan, too good of a player to pass up. So when Bill Walsh went in the second round with a nose tackle with his first pick of that round, we flipped that to the third round to try to keep it similar in process. So we went Darian Porter, 6'3", over 200-pound cornerback out of Iowa State. Then C.J. West, we go back to the defensive line, the same way that Bill Walsh went secondary. And we go C.J. West, a run plugger who has some upside with pass defense. And I think this is crazy, the fact that you have Graham, Nolan, and C.J. West. If you walked out of that draft with just those names alone, people would go crazy. Then we had to stick to it and take another from the same position. So defensive line, we went Antoine Powell-Ryland, the edge out of Virginia Tech, and added a guy who had huge production last year in the ACC with 16 sacks, and a guy that wins consistently with great handwork and has the ability to really time some of his punches and be able to get offensive tackles off balance. I like him a lot. Then we were able to go offense for the first time, and staring us right in the face was an offensive tackle that absolutely fit what the 49ers do in their zone scheme in Chase Lunt, one of the top players in cutting off backside pursuit. He's really good at doing that. He's really good on the second level, good hips. I think Chase Lunt is a dynamite pick for the 49ers there at the end of round 4. Then we were looking for a linebacker as we were able to go defense, and it didn't have to be defensive line. And we took Teddy Buchanan, linebacker out of California. Dude's twitched up, and he's going to fit really nice in this system. I think he's a developmental player who could help early on special teams and then develop into a potential 3-down linebacker. Then it was all about speed, as the way Bill Walsh turned completely to offense, we did the same. And he went running back with this pick, and so did we. We took Jaden Blue, the speedster from Texas, 4'2", a 40 guy, a guy that absolutely moves. Got some fumbling concerns. There's some things that he needs to work on, but when you're sitting here in round 5 and you have a chance to get a guy that runs a 4'2", you don't hesitate with an elite trait like that. Then when we got into the 7th round, we took wide receiver Brew McCoy out of Tennessee. He's dealt with injuries early in his career, but has been a really good player at Tennessee. Physical at the point of attack, creates separation, runs a 4.5 for a 6'4", over 200-pound wide receiver. Pretty good separation skills, good hand catcher, yards after the catch, a lot to like about him. He comes from the same school as Jawan Jennings, and I think he's got a little Jawan in him. I just don't know if he's going to be able to separate the same way. Jawan just does it special, even though Brew McCoy is faster than Jawan Jennings, a lot faster, in fact. Then we went Benjamin Urasek, the tight end transfer from Stanford to Georgia. Had a good season for the Georgia Bulldogs, was productive, and I think he would fit in really nice with the 49ers as they're looking for a third potential tight end. And Urasek could come in and compete and potentially win that third spot. With this current draft makeup, the way that it was built, there wasn't really the guy at pick 138 where we took Chase Lunt, the tight end, that we probably would have rather went with there. There wasn't that guy. They were already gone. So we had to wait until later. So I think doing it the way that Bill Walsh did make it a little bit more difficult on some of the offensive needs that you're looking for, but addressing defensive needs, it definitely worked. And then the last pick, we took Andrew Armstrong. And Armstrong is a 6'3", 202-pound wide receiver that played opposite of Isaac Tesla. And Tesla's another big body receiver. I think if these guys had a better quarterback and a better scheme overall, Andrew Armstrong would be talked about, way higher than this. Probably, early day 3 pick instead of a late day 3 pick. And he's got the size. He had the production, 78 catches for over 1,000 yards. A really good player. And I think Andrew Armstrong and Brew McCoy come in and compete for some of those big body moments, blocking, doing some of the things physically, but can also have contested catches and win over the middle of the field. I think they're both a lot of fun. So this is what we did. This is the draft that we made, going with the 49ers 1981 Bill Walsh philosophy, attacking completely on one side of the ball and attacking at one position. Defensive tackle, defensive line, per se, is the biggest need, right? In 1981, it was secondary, safeties and corners. This time it's defensive line, and the 49ers don't disappoint, absolutely reshaping if they are able to strike on this type of thing. Are we going to have these guys exactly potentially there? I don't know. I don't see this playing out this way. I think that if Mason Graham slipped, that'd be great. But I don't know if that means Walter Nolan would slip to 43. I think there's a chance you could get one of those guys potentially. But it was an interesting exercise, and I didn't want to diminish a player slipping because Ronnie Lott slipped in 1981. So I kind of wanted to keep that the same. But when you walk away from a position and you restructure that position group by going Mason Graham, Walter Nolan, CJ West, Antoine Powell, Ryland, you're doing pretty good job. So it was a fantastic exercise looking at what Walsh could do. You could change these names up, but put in place this structure and find those 4 defensive linemen that you could hit. An edge rusher, 3 defensive tackles, 2 edge rushers, 2 defensive tackles. You figure it out. Do you think this is a possibility for the 49ers going this way and going with Bill Walsh's philosophy? Let me know in the comment section. Thought it was an interesting conversation. And which guys would you take? Would you take the same guys that I took? Let me know. But thanks for watching. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. I'll, like and subscribe to the channel. Almost went blank. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.